A quick show of hands. How many of you remember playing with these as kids? Awesome. I, for one, can close my eyes and reminisce the absolute sense of imagination and creativity that these blocks could evoke. Now imagine if you could use these blocks to create a world of your own, a real world. So that could be something like you being sent back in time to 1624 to recreate the city of New York. How cool would that be? Can you imagine the endless possibilities? Well, that's exactly the feeling that I got when I looked at my job description about 6 years back. The project in this instance was the first of its kind city within a city concept in the world. And it was called the Dubai International Financial Center. So as it happened, the government of Dubai had latched onto this opportunity that there was no financial center which was serving the region between London and Singapore. Now, I probably know what some of you are thinking here. You're probably thinking, well, we know this region has a lot of potential. But then we also know that this region is synonymous with certain other words: red tape, corruption, poor infrastructure, social and political turmoil. And you would be absolutely correct. However, we are not today here to talk about the present. We are here to talk about a future in which you all would be global leaders. So how about we take a look at the macroeconomic future for this part of the world? If we were having this conversation around in, say, 2009, this region's overall economic output would have been something around 40% of the size of the US economy. Fast forward on to 2020, this number could be as high as 55%. And by 2030, this number could be 70% or even higher. In a sense, this region would be imperative for your business, no matter what business you're in. And the cool part is that the trends which are changing these numbers are already underway. About a decade back, if you were running an international business, your business would have been a part of what was known as the East-West Trading Corridor. And the East-West Trading Corridor used to contribute to about $8.5 out of every $10 exchanging hands globally. However, in the last decade, there is another force which is changing the landscape of global trade completely. And this phenomena, ladies and gentlemen, is known as the New Silk Route. Let's try to understand this phenomena through the eyes of our first protagonist, Shan Li. Now, Shan Li is a first-generation Chinese entrepreneur. She started a small disposable medical supplies business back in 2003. She was catering clients to predominantly in Europe and in the Americas. However, as we all know, by 2009, things had changed. The world was different. Poor economic conditions and the fact that regulations had become really stringent in the West forced her to consider other markets. It was at that point in time that she heard about this whole story of growth in Africa and India and the Middle East. Not surprisingly, 16 months later, Shan Li was on a plane halfway across the globe, and she started a very small re-export hub in Dubai with just 5 employees. In 2010, I was fortunate enough to meet Shan Li again, and this time around, boy, had the fortunes changed. Her 5-man operation had grown to over 100 employees, and her business had grown 1,200%. And let me assure you, Shan Li is not an exception. In fact, according to the World Bank, this zone, or the South-South Trading Corridor, or the New Silk Route, is going to contribute to $7 out of every $10 exchanging hands globally by 2030. I saw the proof of this growth firsthand myself from the city that I was privileged to start. When we started in 2004, these were the clients which were registered with us, 20 of them, and these are all of them. I would love you to guess as to how many clients does this city host today. 1,400 plus. And this is just a small sample of the kind of clients it hosts. But then, the business and economics is just one part of the equation. There is a far greater social force which is completely transforming this part of the world. Now, let me ask you all a question at this point in time. If I asked all of you which country or region in the world today produces the highest proportion of women entrepreneurs, what would your answer be? I bet a lot of you would be saying Silicon Valley, but would you be surprised if I said no? It is not Silicon Valley. But in fact, it's in places like Yemen and Uganda, where 40% of the entrepreneurs are women. Let's try to understand this phenomena through the eyes of our second protagonist, Najla. Najla is a mother of 4, and she's a Saudi national. Ever since she was 16, she always wanted to start her own private brand of clothing label. Unfortunately, the society did not give her much of a chance. In fact, apart from a supportive husband, nobody really came to her help. And added to that, the regulations in Saudi Arabia for women entrepreneurs were so stringent that she was not even allowed to represent herself in front of the government. And in spite of all these limitations, Najla finally broke through the glass ceiling and started her own private label in 2012 and named it Sheila. Now, having seen Najla, and by the way, Najla is the one to your left. Now, having seen Najla and having kind of heard her story, do you believe you really understand the needs and aspirations of Najla as a customer? And this is where most multinationals make a mistake. They pick up a product or service from one part of the world and take it to another part without really understanding the ground realities. Till you really understand the trials and tribulations of Najla, do you really understand the environment that she operates in, it won't really justify that Najla gives her business to you. So now, going back to our example of the Lego bricks. This region is like a pack of Lego bricks where all the pieces are coming together. Some of these pieces are broken. Some are not there. And there are others which are still under formation. And it would be your responsibility as future leaders to put all these pieces together. And while you do that, you need to remember that there is no precedence. So you need to push the status quo. You need to be innovative. But at the same time, you need to be patient and you need to be respectful. And there are a couple of principles which I personally like to follow, which I would love to share with you all. First, read. But don't always take the mass media too seriously. Secondly, learn, but start by unlearning. And finally, every opportunity that you get, go out and meet the Najlas and the Shanlis of the world. Try to soak in a little bit of their culture and their life. And I must admit, I made my own fair share of mistakes. In my first stint in the Middle East, I was supposed to start a women's-only banking product for one of the multinational clients. And I went into the market imagining them to be my customers. And I was not totally off the mark. They were, in fact, a part of the segment that I was going to cater to, but I made one fundamental mistake. I forgot the other end of the spectrum. So let me try to end this presentation with one of my favorite quotes, that the mind is like a parachute. It does not work if it doesn't open. Thank you.